Thanks for joining tonight. I'm Claire, and I'm a senior in high school from Great Neck North High School, which is in New York. And I guess just to introduce like designing for assistive technology, if you're not part of it or you're just from one of our schools, we're basically just like a collaboration between like multiple schools with like a bunch of us from different states like California or New York. And our goal is basically to provide a bunch of like customized assistive tech for people in our own communities. So today our speaker event is Abigail. So do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself, Abigail?
Sure. Thanks, Claire, for organizing this. And I'm excited to get to spend the next hour with the rest of you. I'm hoping that it's going to be pretty interactive. So hopefully everybody can turn on their cameras if they are comfortable doing so. And we can have we can interact, have a conversation, and work together to do an activity and learn some things. So yes, as Claire said, I'm Abigail. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I work on accessibility as my primary full-time focus. In the last 3 years, I've been working on Chrome and ChromeOS accessibility. And before that, I was working on Google Docs, Sheets and Slides accessibility. So some of the things that I've done while working at Google are I've built automatic captioning services. So basically, like if you play a video, Google will use its speech recognition software to automatically caption it. And I've built some of those things. I've done a bunch of other things with other assistive technologies as well that we'll get into during this talk. And before I was at Google, I did something very similar to what you all are doing, but it was in college. I took a course at my college, and we built a piece of technology for a member of our community. And that was the first way that I got involved in accessibility. So I really believe in what you all are doing, and I think it's so important, and I'm excited to be here. Should I just go ahead and do the talk?
Yeah, you can go ahead and get started.
All right, great. So I'm gonna go ahead and present some slides. All right. So yeah, as I said, I work at Google, and today what I'm going to talk to you about is accessibility, and specifically about accessibility of technology, because of course that's what I work on, you know, computers, the web, and all that. There's obviously many different ways that we make the world accessible, but today we're going to talk about making technology accessible. And I just want to give a disclaimer that this is a talk that's just my own personal capacity, not representing Google here in this arena. You probably already know this, but I'll just go over some really high-level basics. What is accessibility? It's making sure that all users, including people with disabilities, have equal access to everything. But as I said, in this talk, we'll talk about technology. And in order to have access to technology, people use a variety of different things to help them. And we call these assistive technologies. I have a really long list here of technologies that people might use to use their computers. And we're going to go over 4 of them in some detail. So I'm just going to skip right ahead. There's many different options. Maybe I'll just read a couple, like joystick, sip and puff, captions, large font, magnification, on-screen keyboard. There's just a long list of different things that we work on at Google, as well as at many other companies. So I want to talk about 4 today that are some of the most important ones that we focus on when we talk about people using computers. And what we're going to do is I'm going to run through these really quickly, and actually we're going to spend the bulk of our time writing a little bit of code and trying to actually make some, make a sample piece of code, a sample website accessible to screen readers. So I don't know, actually I would love to get a sense right now if you all can raise your hands or just unmute yourselves and tell me. Can you all tell me, like, I guess a couple of things. One, what kind of computer are you using right now? And two, have you ever looked at the code, like at HTML, like at website code? So can you, I guess, first, can you raise your hand if you like know about website code or if you've used it before? I'm seeing a couple, 3. So it looks like some have, some haven't. Great, that's totally fine. Or maybe the hands are still coming in. Totally fine, it's not a prerequisite. Just wanted to get a sense. Okay, and then the second question that I have, if you can undo your hands. This one might need more of a, well, we'll still do hands. Okay, can you raise your hand if you're using a Windows machine right now? 1, 2, 3. Seeing a lot of hands or claps. Can you now undo all those hands? And can you raise your hand if you're using a MacBook? 1, couple, 4 hands. So about maybe a third of you all are using MacBooks. Okay. Anybody using neither of those two options? No hands. That's fine. We'll convert you to Chromebooks another day. I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's totally fine. So I have to give a disclaimer, which is that our activity is gonna deal with screen readers, and the screen reader on Windows is not built in, at least not the one that people normally use. So for my for my Windows computer users, I'm just gonna give you a disclaimer that it's going to be slightly less interactive, but you're going to follow along with me, and then I can give you some instructions afterwards. But it would just be very annoying to download the Windows screen reader later. Okay, that's my disclaimer. Jumping back into the topic of today. Okay, so one of the main ways that that blind people, or probably the main way that blind people use computers, is they use screen readers. Screen readers are a piece of technology that reads out loud what's the content of what's on your screen. It will read not just the text on the screen, but it will read other information such as what is the structure of the screen. So it might tell you like where the menus are and where links are, and it will say like this is a link and this is a header, and it gives a lot of other semantic information to give a screen reader user, oftentimes a blind person, a full picture of what is on the screen, even if they cannot see it themselves. Let's see. So another assistive technology that people who are blind will use, and they'll use this in combination with their with a screen reader, is a braille display. This is a physical device that somebody might have. It might have like 40 cells, or maybe up to even 80, or maybe fewer. And basically what it is there are these little pins that will rise and fall, and they'll form braille characters mechanically based on what the screen reader is saying. And so this is a way for somebody to be able to read basically what the screen reader is speaking out loud, but they can read it in braille. Oftentimes people find this is faster, and this is certainly really important for people who can't hear the screen reader but need it, such as people who are deaf and blind. Okay, another really important assistive technology is a screen magnifier. This is something that somebody might use who is low vision, and they might it allows them to increase the size of the content of their screen. So on this, in this slide, there's an image that has a computer, and it has like basically the upper left-hand corner of a Google Sheet blown up really, really big. And that's what it might look like if you were looking at a Google Sheet with a screen magnifier, is one part of it is gonna look really big. And as you are reading the page and you're moving your cursor around, that like blown up window will follow your cursor, and you'll be able to see whatever you're looking at, but at a very magnified size. I would definitely encourage you all to explore the accessibility section of your operating system. Like there will be an accessibility thing under settings, and I would definitely encourage you to explore that. Screen magnifiers will probably be, or screen magnifier or zoom will probably be one of the options. In fact, I'll show you where it is on my Mac system preferences right after this. Okay, the final assistive technology that I just want to show you all that people might use, that people with low vision might use to use a computer, is called high contrast mode. Essentially what it does is it might either invert or it might change the coloring of the of your screen to be more sensitive to one's eyes. So in this case, I have a Wikipedia page, and with my high contrast mode on, it makes the white background of Wikipedia, it's normally white, it made it black, and it changed some of the link coloring to be to still have like a very visible, you can still read the link coloring behind the black background, but it's like a little bit more soft, I guess. And this is something that somebody might use who is also low vision or might otherwise be really sensitive to like bright colors, and having a black background is oftentimes easier to read. I mean, now a lot of us are familiar with dark mode. I'm assuming many of you are familiar with dark mode. So it's actually pretty mainstream at this point, which is great. But there's also certain like other types of modes that people might use to have an even more precise contrast level. Okay, I'm gonna actually escape from this presentation and just show you really quickly the accessibility menu on the Mac, but it's gonna be pretty similar for all of you Windows users as well. So there's a bunch of different options, and I just encourage you to play around with this if you're interested. But the zoom option that I was talking about with that's a screen magnifier. Unfortunately, I tried zooming my screen earlier, and it actually doesn't show you on Zoom, on the application, the like video conferencing app to Zoom. It doesn't show you that, and actually it's for a good reason. The reason is that oftentimes we want to be as private as possible for people who are using assistive technologies, because it's a very personal thing, and disability is also protected. So like we don't necessarily want to make it, you don't necessarily, if you are using a screen magnifier, you don't necessarily want the people who you're presenting in front of to know that you're using a screen magnifier, and it's not really any of their business. So for that reason, if I were to like present my screen while using this zoom or even this like invert colors, like I just checked invert colors, but I think none of you can see that I inverted my colors. And that's just because it's like a very private thing that we wouldn't want to be presenting to for like a professional thing on Zoom. So anyways, I would definitely encourage you all to look into this. There's a lot of interesting options that you can play around with to learn more about assistive technologies. All right, jumping back into the presentation. Okay, we're at the activity, which is perfect. We have about 30 minutes to 35 minutes to do our activity. So I actually first want to just pause here and ask if anybody has any questions before we jump into the activity. Maybe I'll take like two questions if you have it. Otherwise, we'll just jump right into the activity.
I actually have a question. So, were there any major lessons that you've learned when working with individuals with disabilities?
Oh, good question. I mean, definitely the first one is to listen to the people with disabilities and what they have to say. I can give several examples of that. The most recent one is I was building a captioning tool. It's called Live Caption. It's on Chrome, and it allows people to basically watch a video or listen to an audio being played on Chrome, and Chrome will caption what's being said using speech to text or machine learning. And we built this, and we had talked to people who were deaf and hard of hearing, but not in like the large numbers that we hear from people once something is launched, obviously. And so we built this, and we basically made it so that when you're watching a video on a particular tab, we will caption the video right underneath, and the captions will be displayed on a tab. And if you switch tabs, the captions will disappear because they're like displayed on the tab itself. Well, we heard from people from people once we launched, some deaf and hard of hearing people, that actually they didn't really want the captions to stay on the tab. They really wanted to be able to multitask while using captions. So, like, for example, as a hearing person, when I'm like on a Zoom call like this, sometimes I'll be checking my email, on the side, but I'm still listening, so I'm still like following, but I'm like kind of doing this other stuff, And if captions only appear on the video, then the person who's deaf or hard of hearing and needs the captions doesn't have the opportunity to be checking their email on the side, because they have to keep the tab with the captions open. And so we heard from really strongly that people really wanted to be able to multitask. And so we basically changed course to ensure that people could do that. So yeah, I would say, to answer your question, taking feedback and trying to understand who you're building something for is like probably the #1 most important thing. Good question. Anybody else? Thank you for the chat about the short URL. Anybody else have a question before we dive in? All right, so let's dive into the activity. So I put the activity in like a folder on Google Drive. So if you all could go to this short URL, it's shortURL.at/dv_I_Q3. Oh yes, thank you for pasting it in the chat. So basically what you're gonna find in the folder once you download it is three files. Well, first, so download the folder and unzip it, and then you'll find 3 files in it. You're gonna find something called main.html. You're gonna find something called default.css, and you're gonna find something called like button something.png. So the only thing that you need to use is main.html, and this is what I have open. And for the rest of this time, I'm gonna keep this open so you all can follow along, so that even if you get behind, you can catch up by looking at the code here. But first, I'm just gonna get you all to get accustomed to what you're looking at, because I know that it's new for some of you. Just going to give you a few more minutes to make sure that everybody has the download. Can you give me a thumbs up or like a wave your hand, or yeah, thumbs up once you're ready? All right, I see most people are ready. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So again, for those of you who have Windows machines, so basically, unfortunately, the situation on Windows with screen readers is that there's two screen readers that are really popular. They're like the most popular screen readers, but they don't come with a Windows device. They're third party. One of them is called JAWS, and that's actually a paid app. So you definitely don't want to use that. The other one is NVDA, and that one is free. So what you could do is you can download it if you want to explore it. Like I have it downloaded on my Windows device, and it's certainly really interesting to use, particularly if you're interested in technology and accessibility. Like you should definitely play with NVDA. For this activity, just because we don't really have time, I would just recommend following along with what I'm doing. I'm just gonna show you what it's like with the Mac OS screen reader, which is called VoiceOver. So for those of you who do have Mac OS, I'm gonna basically tell you what to do and how to use VoiceOver. And for the rest of you, I'll just let you follow along with my screen, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by just giving you a sense of what's going on with this file. So this is a piece of this is like a website, basically a very basic website, and the website looks like this. So in here we have the content of the website. It says "Welcome to YouTube." It's like a little banner that says "Welcome to YouTube." And underneath of it, we have an image, and it's basically like an image, and it links to this button that I've downloaded for you all, and it's like this nice looking subscribe button. And underneath of it is this empty notification that gets populated when I click subscribe. So I'm going to click subscribe with my mouse, and it says under here, "You have subscribed," and it just flashes. It flashes like an information for like 2 seconds. And that interaction here is expressed in JavaScript, which is all of the text that's between these two script tags. So we basically have we have this button here, and it's let me just move you all. So we have this button, and and we say, like, when you click the button, we want to call this function called subscribe, and this function is defined here. And the function essentially says that when it says basically for when this function is called, we're going to take this subscribe notification element. Right here, subscribe notification element, and we're going to say that we're going to give it some text inside, and we're going to say it's going to say you have subscribed. And so when you click the button, then the alert is going to show some text, you have subscribed, and then 2 seconds later, or 2000 milliseconds later, it's going to set it to empty again. And that's what we see when I click subscribe. It shows you have subscribed for 2 seconds, and then we set the text inside to empty, and so then it disappears. Okay, so it's pretty simple, and when I'm just using my mouse to click it, it like looks pretty fine, like "Welcome to YouTube." I click subscribe, and it tells me I've subscribed. Okay, let's see what happens when I turn on a screen reader. So I'm going to turn on VoiceOver. So for those of you who are using Macs, the command for you to use is Command F5. And if you are using a Mac with like that the touch display at the top, like, you know, there's like a display at the top, and it's like touch only, and you may have to press the function key in order to access the F5, because the Fs usually appear in that touch bar. So if you have a touch bar on your Mac, press function Command F5, and if you don't have a touch bar, just press Command F5. Okay, can you all hear this? Welcome to YouTube. Yeah.
To get missing image description, welcome to YouTube.
Okay, cool.
You are currently on a text element inside of web content. To exit this web area.
All right, so I have voiceover on, and it's gonna talk to me, and right now it says welcome to YouTube. That's great. I'm gonna see what it says when I get to the subscribe button. So now, like, let's pretend that you can't see that it says subscribe, and you're just listening to what you're hearing. I have it talking kind of slow, but you can also read along on this this thing right here that I'm shaking. It's basically like displays what voiceover is saying. All right, so let's see what happens when I try to click the subscribe button.
To get missing image descriptions, open the context menu. Unlabeled image. You are currently on an unlabeled image inside of web content. To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Unlabeled image. Wait, that doesn't sound like subscribe. That doesn't sound helpful at all. Okay, so we have a bug, and our bug is that we haven't labeled what this button is, and so for all intents and purposes, it's nothing to our screen reader user. So I'm going to turn off voiceover.
Voiceover off.
And we're going to fix this bug. So I'm going to go back to this thing. So as I said, we have a problem, which is that we have an unlabeled button, and I've shown the snippet of code that's relevant right now. So I'll just explain how we're gonna the way that we're gonna fix this is we're gonna use something called ARIA, which means Accessible Rich Internet Applications, and it's basically like this this type of code that extends beyond HTML to clarify to the screen readers what the content of the website is underneath of what the content of the website is. So it explains like semantically what the website is actually doing. So I'll give you an example. Well, we just saw an example, but I'll give you another example, which is I used to work on Google Docs, and if you're familiar with Google Docs, you know that it has like a file menu and an edit menu and format and insert and like all these, it has a menu. And if you were to read the code for that, the code doesn't say that it's a menu at all. It basically just says it's like some generic building block elements. So like there's nothing in the code that tells you that it's a menu. And so a screen reader needs to know that it's a menu because menus have really important like semantic information. Like a screen reader user might want to be able to actually go directly to the menu when they're working to be able to really quickly like do something, and we need to be able to communicate that it's a menu. So ARIA lets us do this. So you can use all these different roles to set to clarify like what different things on the screen are. Like you can label something as a button or as a menu. As I said, you can say so that something's a search box. Like that's really helpful if you just, instead of just having like a text, what we call a text area, or like basically an area of the screen where you can enter text. If you want to specifically tell a screen reader user, like this isn't just anywhere that you type something, it's actually a search box. That's like really useful. Tab list as well, you can use, and there's just so many roles that you can use. You can also set certain states, like you can say whether a checkbox is checked or not. Usually like when you have a checkbox and somebody checks it, like that's just visual, that doesn't communicate anything semantically to a screen reader user. Like that checkbox is essentially, it's like an image that appears, that the check mark, it's an image. So you have to communicate that underneath the hood, this checkbox is actually checked. You have to be able to communicate that to a screen reader. Similarly, like sometimes you see buttons that are like grayed out, and that means it's disabled, but to a screen reader user, like they don't know that it's grayed out. So you have to be able to actually communicate to a screen reader, like this is a disabled button. There's tons of different types of states and roles that ARIA lets us use to communicate semantics. So we're gonna dive in and use a few of them. So we are going to modify our totally unlabeled button that just says like, or well, it doesn't even say it's a button, it just says it's an unlabeled image. And we're gonna do two things. One, we're going to give the image alt text. Alt text is very important. Without alt text, this image, it either says unlabeled image, or even worse, it might say like button-YT6B9A-H_res. Like sometimes I've heard screen readers say that. It seems like VoiceOver is actually a little bit smarter for realizing that it's just unlabeled, but I've heard other screen readers say like a very long URL name. So that's obviously not very helpful to a screen reader user. So we want to actually say that it says subscribe. So I'm going to add to my code here, alt equals subscribe. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to give the span, which is basically like the object that just holds the image inside. We're going to give that a label of an ARIA label of subscribe. And now the reason that we do this is because for all intents and purposes, this object itself, what we call the span, but the object itself is what the user ultimately focuses on, and it's what actually gets what the user will focus on, which will be what the screen reader reads out loud. So we basically label both of them, and it's kind of like just a coding thing. But either way, we have to label both of them. So we give the image alt text and we give the span an ARIA label. Okay, so I'm gonna refresh the screen, my web page. All right, let's see what happens. I'm gonna turn on VoiceOver again.
Screen, voice, welcome to YouTube. Subscribe, image. You are currently on an image.
Ooh, did you hear that? I'm gonna play it again.
Subscribe, welcome to YouTube. You are currently on a text element inside of web content.
Okay, let's see what happens when we go to the next one.
Subscribe, group. You are currently on a group inside of web content.
Okay, subscribe group. I realized
VoiceOver off.
I didn't tell the people who are using VoiceOver how to navigate with VoiceOver. So I'm gonna just explain that really quickly. So what I'm doing, the way that you use VoiceOver is after you've turned it on with Command F5, the way that you navigate is you use Control Option and then your right and left arrow keys. And you basically hold down Control Option and then you just press like right arrow key a bunch of times, like right, until you get to the interesting content that you're listening to. Advanced VoiceOver users have there's tons of like keyboard shortcuts that like advanced VoiceOver users will memorize and they'll have those in their head. But for us, we just can use Control plus Option plus right arrow key, right arrow to get where we're going. Sorry about that for those of you who are Mac users who are trying to follow along. Okay, so let's do this one more time.
To enable screen reader support, subscribe, image. You are currently on an image. VoiceOver off.
It says subscribe image, but the thing is, this isn't an image, right? It's a button. And I know that it's a button because when I click it, it does something, but it's not telling the users that it's a button. So that's the next thing that we wanna fix. Is the problem is that we don't even, the screen reader doesn't even know that it's a button, and we want to make sure that the screen reader user knows that it's a button. So we are going to use that fancy ARIA stuff that I told you about, and we're going to say role equals button to the to this object. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to give it a tab index of 0. The reason that we want to do this is that basically means that we can tab to it. So as you all are familiar, I'm sure you all are familiar with like tabbing. So a lot of people, even people who don't use, who use their eyes to see the screen and who don't use screen readers, a lot of people will like use their keyboard only, including like, and basically like tab in order to navigate. So they might not use their mouse for a variety of reasons. They might not be able to use it for a bunch of different reasons. Maybe they don't have fine motor control. Maybe they have an alternate keyboard and that's the thing that works best for them. There's a variety of different reasons why somebody might not use a mouse. And certainly screen reader users don't use a mouse because you need to have, basically a screen reader doesn't know how to explain like where a mouse is on screen. So I want to go back to this really quick before I add the tab index, and I want to show you what happens if I tab. So I'm pressing tab, and I'm tabbing through a bunch of stuff. I'm tabbing through right now all of my different buttons in the toolbar. And I'm pressing tab, and right here I'm going to press tab, and I am back on the top. So I tabbed through everything, but I didn't. I'm trying to tab to this button because normally buttons should be tabbable. Like if I need to be able to click a button without a mouse, I need to be able to tab to it so that I can press enter and then it clicks. But I can't tab to it this time. So why can't I tab to it? Well, we haven't made it we haven't made it tabbable. So that's what we do when we type tab index equals 0. So once I type tab index equals 0, now I'm going to save this and I'm going to refresh our demo. Let's see what happens. I'm going to press tab some more. Oh, look, we already tabbed to it. So I'm going to tab some more. And then I can tab to it and I can focus the button. So now I can get my my focus on that button, which is great. I can tab to it. Cool. So so we proved that we can tab to it. Let's also just prove that the screen reader says it's a button. So I'm going to turn on voiceover again.
Voiceover on Chrome, screen reader demo, Google Chrome, Abigail window, web screen reader demo, selected tab. In screen reader, close, out of, new tab, search tabs, pop-up button. You are currently on a pop-up button. /user/Abby Klein / a toolbar item palette. Screen reader demo, in, screen reader demo, web content, welcome to YouTube, welcome to YouTube. You are currently on a text element, subscribe button. You are currently on a button inside of web content. To click this button, press Control Option Space. To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Okay, so it said subscribe button, and it even tells us how to click it. So it says press Control Option Space. So I'm going to try pressing Control Option Space. And it says, well, it didn't really say anything actually. It shows me that it says you have subscribed. I didn't hear you have subscribed. So that's not that helpful. Okay, but at least we can click it. It was very faint. I'm going to try clicking it again. But you might hear it's called an ear con. And it was like a very, very faint, like, doo-doo. It was just this like really slight noise. And it basically tells you that something was clicked. I'm gonna be quiet and I'm gonna do it again.
Grace Sen has joined the meeting.
Okay. I'm gonna do it again. Do you hear it? Yeah, okay, so it's this very faint thing. So we call that an ear con. So it lets the user know that they clicked it, but unfortunately they don't really know what they clicked because nothing happened. And that's like a big accessibility no-no. Like you can't have an action happen and not tell somebody what happened. Like imagine if you like did something and your form and you like erased all of your data and then the computer didn't tell you that you erased all your data. Like that'd be really bad. You need to have some feedback.
Voiceover
so
off.
We're gonna fix that. Okay, so okay. I'm actually gonna skip this one. I'm gonna go straight to the alert one. So as we said, there was no notification that like we didn't hear anything. You have subscribed. We didn't hear that. So we're gonna fix that by using this thing called role equals alert. And it's this, again, this is related to ARIA, which basically when we say that when we say that this item is role equals alert, what's going to happen is that whenever it has text inside, it's going to say that text out loud. So let's see what happens. It's kind of like if you have if you've ever seen like you submit something, you click a button and then like a dialogue appears and it says like alert, like something is about to happen. It's like that, except for it's accessible. All right, let's listen for this alert.
VoiceOver on Chrome, screen reader demo, Google Chrome, Abigail window, screen reader demo, web accessibility, high school presentation, selection deleted, screen reader demo, file, // selection deleted, screen reader demo, welcome to YouTube. You are currently on a text element inside of web content. To subscribe button. You are currently on a button inside of web content. To click this button, press Control Option Space.
Uh-oh, it's because I didn't refresh the page. Silly me.
Sublime text to save. You are currently on Chrome. Welcome to YouTube. Subscribe button. Subscribe image. You have subscribed.
Yay.
You are currently on an image inside of a button.
Should we listen to it one more time? It's so beautiful.
You have subscribed.
Yay.
VoiceOver off.
So that's awesome. We started off from something that said unlabeled image to now having like a button that tells us what it is. And when you click it, it says the what happened like out loud. So that's really great. That's basically like what is required to make a website accessible. And whenever people are developing websites, or web applications, they are doing this type of thing, obviously at a much bigger scale, but they're doing exactly this to make sure that a screen reader user can use their website the exact same and get all the same information that a non-screen reader user can get. Let's see, we have 15 more minutes. I'll just show the one last thing. It's a little trickier. We're just going to basically copy and paste some code. But I just want to make one more point, which is that, so I was telling you about the, how we had to be able to tab to the button. So usually if I didn't have my mouse, I would press tab a bunch of times to the button, and then I would press enter to get to the button. So let's try that. I'm going to press tab a bunch of times. I got to the button, and I'm going to press enter. Uh-oh, why isn't anything happening? Okay, so the problem is that we have this, this button, but it only listens to my mouse click. So when my mouse clicks it, it says you have to subscribe. But when my keyboard clicks it, nothing happens. And this is a really common issue for like lots of web developers will run into this issue. And basically the reason is that we have this event listener here, and it listens for clicks, but it doesn't listen for a key down event. And basically we have some code that's going to fix this. I'm just going to basically type it really quickly. I'll show you what happens. And so what we're going to do is we basically are going to say we're going to handle this key down event. But first what we're going to do is we don't want to handle like every keyboard press. Like we only want to basically be listening for the enter button. So we're just going to check for the enter button's key code. And if somebody clicks the enter button, then we're going to call this the same subscribe function, which is going to say you have subscribed. So let's just try that real quick. I'm going to press tab, and I'm going to press enter, and it says you have subscribed. And if I press another key, like if I press the G key, nothing happens. But if I press enter, I get subscribed. Okay, that was a lot. I'm glad this is recorded so that if you want, you can look back at it. And I can also, after this if you want for me to email this whole thing out, if you want to play around with it yourself. But this has hopefully been a helpful, like, hands-on experience at making like an actual web page accessible. So that's my talk. I now can definitely open it up for questions for the remainder of our time together, but just want to say thank you for playing along, and hopefully you learned something. I see a couple of hands. I don't see names though. Why do I not see names? How do I see names? Guys, why haven't I learned how to use Zoom? This is terrible. Maybe I have to stop sharing to see your names. Okay, well, I'm just gonna let Claire be in charge of calling people's names because I can't see anybody's names.
Yeah, so I think Megan, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so this is like an HTML question. So you used an image like for your button. If that was button instead of image, would the screen reader say that without the role?
So that's a great question. Great call out. If I had used a button, I would not have had to use the role. And in fact, we sometimes recommend people use button over using role equals button. But the reason that many people don't want to use button is because button sometimes comes with some styling that people don't necessarily want. And so we find that oftentimes, even though using button, like the button tag, is semantically the same as role equals button, because of like styling effects, like it might add shadows or whatnot, people oftentimes prefer to use images, which is why we need to teach people to use role equals button. Good call out.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Kenneth, you want to ask?
Yeah. First of all, this is super cool. This is like wild. This is the coolest thing I've seen in a while. So thanks so much for taking time to do this. But I don't have a lot of code experience. This might be like an obvious question, but like before you like made the button clickable, wasn't it or clickable using like your spacebar, wasn't it already can you already use like control option space to do that? Like why was that an issue that you needed to like fix?
Okay, first of all, I just want to say that there are no dumb questions. I know that's like a cliche, but first of all, there's no dumb questions, and that question especially was definitely not dumb. That's actually that's a very nuanced thing that you noticed. But just want to say, like, I want this, like, this is, I totally recognize that, like, many of you may have never coded in your lives before, and that's great. This is like very exciting. So I just don't, there's no dumb question. That question in particular is like a very good question. It's a very, you notice something very, very specific. So control option space is it's a keyboard shortcut that is provided by VoiceOver. So I have this screen reader VoiceOver that's running, and VoiceOver says, hey, you can press control option space, and we will take that keyboard shortcut and we'll translate it into a mouse click. So what actually was happening was when I pressed control option space, VoiceOver converted that into a mouse click and basically simulated a mouse click in the center of that button. But when I wasn't using VoiceOver, so the second time when I did the space bar, I actually wasn't using VoiceOver at all. And when I wasn't using VoiceOver, I didn't have that like handy control option space thing happening for me. All I had was my keyboard. And what I was trying to say at the end was that there are many people who just use their keyboard and don't use a screen reader. Like it's actually a very, very common thing, probably more common than screen reader users. It's just people who don't use their mouse. And so making sure that you have your website accessible to keyboard only users is really important too. And so for those users, they don't have any ability to simulate a mouse click. So for them, you definitely need to do handle the enter or the space bar.
Okay, that was super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you talk about accessibility in website and web development, because that's something that I often overlook. What are some other things that you find important? So you talked about like buttons and like images, but what are some things that you also find important that developers look for when making a website accessible?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would say that the number, like the top things that I look for when I tell people who are first getting involved in making their website accessible, or first getting started in making their website accessible, there's probably 3 things that are like the most important things. One is labeling all of your images. People oftentimes forget to label their images. Just add alt text. That was the, let me see if I can show it. Are you still able to see my screen? That was this alt text here. Alt equals subscribe next to the image tag. Add alt text to all of your images. Number 2 is caption all of your videos. Like even though I built this like automatic captioning tool, it's not going to be as good as if you, a web developer, caption your videos like right off the bat with like human-made captioning. And number 3 is make it keyboard accessible. So I'm not talking about making it screen reader accessible. I'm talking about making it keyboard accessible. So that means throw away your mouse for the day and try just using tab to use your website and see if you can use your website. And that right there is like a lot of work for people to make sure that they can use tab. When I say that you can throw away your mouse and use tab, I mean that like any link on your page, somebody can tab to it and click on it. Any button, somebody can tab to it and click it. Any form element, somebody can tab to it, type stuff in and press enter. And that right there is like very hard. After that, I would say the next thing to do is really dive into the assistive technologies. So for instance, turn on that invert colors thing that I was showing like way long before this, this high contrast mode. Turn that on and see what your website looks like in that. Oftentimes the colors, once you turn that on, suddenly like you won't be able to see, to like read some text on it. And that oftentimes means that the contrast ratio between like the text and the background isn't good enough. If you Google like contrast ratio, you can look that up and make sure that your like all of your text has a proper value, such that if somebody is inverting their colors or changing their contrast mode, that they'll still be able to read the text. And also sometimes like images will look kind of funny. Icons will look kind of funny with high contrast mode. So that's like another thing. You can also look at, turn on a magnifier and see how that looks. Like a common mistake for magnifiers is, and honestly, this is something that we face as well still, is like you have a button in like the bottom of your screen, and when you click it, like an alert comes up at the top of the screen and it says like, alert, your form has been submitted, let's say. But if your screen magnifier is like focused on the bottom of the screen, it's really blown up like the bottom of the screen, that alert, which appeared like way farther up, it might not be in the viewport anymore. And so that would be something that you would only discover by turning on a screen magnifier. And then finally with a screen reader, I would just recommend like actually going through the entire website and reading and like listening to everything and just like seeing how it sounds. Another thing that you should know is like screen reader users, the way that they navigate a screen is very, very efficient compared to the way that I was just doing it and that like novice users are going to do it. So there's a lot of different keyboard shortcuts that they might use to be able to like jump around. The example I like to give is like, when you go to a restaurant and you look at a menu for the first time, you don't read every single item on the menu. Instead, what you do is you read the headings. You read like appetizers, salads, soups, main courses, dessert. And then when you see the heading that you want to go to, that's when you dive in and you read like all of the options underneath. And screen reader users do the same thing when they're exploring a website. They will like read all of the headings on the website, or they might read all of the links or the buttons on the website to get a sense of like just how the website is, like this. And then once they like know that, then they'll dive in to like get more information about a particular heading. So once you're like exploring screen readers, having different landmarks and different types of like headings and like markers to tell a screen reader what's going on is going to be useful. So yeah, long-winded answer.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? I guess we're pretty much at time. If there's a burning question, I could take it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had one last question. Like, I was wondering if there were any like assistive or like accessibility features that you want to implement in the future, like maybe in like your job, or just any improvements that you want to make to the current ones that you've worked on before.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, the answer is definitely yes. I don't know how much I can talk about it though, about like actual plans. But there's certainly like plenty of things that we want to do to improve. Yeah, I don't know how much I can say, unfortunately, but the answer is definitely yes. There's so many things that can be improved. Like my team works on ChromeOS, which is like the a computer that Google builds, and we build assistive technologies on ChromeOS that are very similar to the ones on Mac or on Windows, and we are constantly looking to improve them. And there's just like, as I was showing you in, where was it? In the system preferences, like there's so many different things, and there's so many different things that like we want to make better. Like recently our team released something that's like kind of like this switch control. We've been working on dictation, which is kind of similar to voice control. I've been working on captioning a lot, and there's a lot of improvements that captioning can do. I mean, just in terms of like the quality of the speech, it can always get better. Yeah, there's so many different things that we want and need to improve. I think also, like, in addition to just building new assistive technologies, like making them more efficient for users, like for example, screen reader users are very, very fast at using screen readers, but it's still a little bit slower than a sighted user. And so making improvements to make that experience faster is good. Or like, for example, with switch control is essentially like somebody might use, they might not be able to use their entire keyboard, but they might only be able to use like 2 buttons to be able to interact with their computer. Like, and maybe one button represents a tab key and one button represents the enter key. And so that can be a very slow way to interact with the computer, and like ways to make that faster is also something that we're thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for giving this talk. I really liked your like the whole demo. I thought that was really cool and interactive.
Great. Thank you all for coming and being so present. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Since it's like a little past 8, you guys are free to go now. And yeah, thank you again, Abigail.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much.